The following is brought to you by goldseekmint.com. Silver and gold bullion directly from the mint. goldseekmint.com.
Welcome to Cambridge House Live. I'm Vanessa Collette here at the Sprott Symposium, and pleased to have joining us today Louis James, Senior Editor of the International Speculator. Welcome, Louis. Great
Thanks.
to see you.
Happy to be here.
Now, Louis, you do a lot of on-the-ground site visits. What do you learn from visiting a project firsthand?
Well, the first answer and most obvious one is to try to separate the sh from shinola, because anybody can write in a press release, oh, we have this, we have that. I've been doing this for about 10 years now, and I've got Doug's experience to call on, Doug Casey, of course. So I can recognize certain minerals, I can recognize certain formations, and if management says we have X, the primary job is to go and see if it really is X. But on top of that, there's just a lot of depth, detail that you can't get from the press releases or the corporate presentations, and meeting the technical people, for example. Or the villagers that may or may not be around. I speak Spanish, I speak French, I speak some Russian now, and so I can get a feel. Are they happy to see mining in the area or not? That sort of thing, and you're just never going to get that without going there.
That's such a good point, because a company can say that they have tremendous relations with the local groups, but unless you actually talk to them firsthand, you're not getting the.
That's actually happened to me. A very large gold mining company that I won't name went to visit their very large operation in South America, and they said, oh, we have great social relations, but on the way up, the bus had to go the long way around because there was a roadblock by the villagers on the way to the mine gate.
Oh my gosh.
So you're not going to get that from a press release.
Right. Now, going on site visits, I always enjoyed them personally because you get to spend a lot of time with management. So what do you look for from management when you're on site with them?
Ranges the gamut. I mean, sometimes you just get the feeling like you're talking to a used car salesman. They won't look you in the eye, or a very simple question like, how much money do you have in the bank? And they say, oh, I better ask the accountant. They don't need to ask the accountant. They know bloody well how much they have or have not in the bank at that time, right?
Yeah, they should know
So
their
simple
burn
things
rate.
like that. Does this pass the smell test? Down to technical details. Again, I've been doing this long enough that I can ask questions, and if the guy doesn't really know what he's talking about, I can tell. Plenty of their answers will go over my head. I mean, I'm not an engineer. But you can really begin to separate, dial in. And when you need expertise, you can hire a consultant. You can fill in the gaps. But you need to know, are you dealing with competent people? And that's primary.
It's absolutely competence. What are some of the most common flaws that you would encounter after seeing a project in person, aside from maybe the community relations aspect?
Let's say optimistic assumptions.
Okay.
Right. Let's say just starting with a resource model. They may have a resource that's inferred, and it's, inferred is really conceptual. Inferred is a good word for it. It's not actually there. You hope it's there. You infer that it's there based on a few holes, right? And that can be based on some pretty good assumptions. If it's a very regular kind of mineralization, it's a fairly safe inference. But sometimes they get kind of aggressive with those assumptions, and it gets kind of silly. But you're able legally to say, oh, we have this inferred resource.
Right.
So these are the kinds of things you really want to be careful for.
Now, traveling a lot, I guess you must be quite aware of geopolitical risk. What are some of the geopolitical risk you see out there these days?
Well, there's an interesting world today. Our world is heating up right now. We've got open warfare breaking out in the Middle East and in Eastern Europe. It's kind of crazy. But that's not the normal sort of political risk we're dealing with. There are places that are known kleptocracies. Bolivia, for example. I'm just not interested in Bolivia. No matter how great the project is, why go somewhere where there's a pretty good chance the government will steal your project if you build it?
Right.
So there are other places that are more borderline and maybe have had a questionable past, and maybe they have new management, right? They're turning around. Whether I give them a chance or not is really a function of price. At some point, price trumps risk. And if the discount is overdone on something because of past history in the country, it may be worth a look.
Now, what are some of the more dangerous jurisdictions and some of the safer ones that you've seen?
Well, I mentioned Bolivia. A place like that is one to think of. And without wanting to name too many names, maybe Ecuador is one that's a question mark now. It's turning around. Venezuela is obviously something that's very difficult. Argentina, unfortunately, has become difficult, but they may have a change in management soon too. Great rocks. There are parts of Africa, maybe that's an important one to discuss, because there's a sort of Africa-wide discount, and maybe justifiably so. But not all the countries are the same, obviously, and some of them have pretty good rule of law. Some of them are clearly welcoming mining. Right now, I'd say Burkina Faso, for example, is a good African country, and it doesn't deserve to be tarred with the same brush as all the rest of Africa.
Ghana, Tanzania.
Ghana has
to an
been good,
extent.
Tanzania to an extent. Even Mali, there was a coup, there was a big scare, but none of that ever really had anything to do with the mining. And in fact, the miners were never really in danger. It was all 1,000 kilometers away in the Saharan part of the country.
And do you follow the Fraser Institute rankings, or do you find it to be accurate?
That's actually, I'm glad you asked that. We have our own country risk score. It's called the Casey Country Score, and people can find that on our website, caseyresearch.com. And we do take the Fraser survey into consideration. But the Fraser survey, it's important to focus on that word, it's a survey. They ask the CEOs what they think. And the CEOs are not always entirely, I don't want to say dishonest, but they have their own biases, let's say. They want to tout their country where they're operating, and they're very nervous about places where they've been burned before, even if the place is now better. So it's fairly subjective, I would say. So we take that as one data point. We look at inflation in countries. We look at other more numerical values that we can put into a coefficient, and we actually assign a coefficient of risk to these countries.
Now, how do you find the next big thing?
Well, Doug's been in this business for 30 years, and I inherited his network, and I have to say a lot of it is sort of a feel, a word on the street. What is the next flavor of the day going to be? That's part of it, but it's not entirely mystical either. There's also just look at the trends, look at the prices, what's going on in the world. Like the current interest in platinum and palladium, that was pretty visible in the trends for the metals, for production, supply, and demand, that sort of thing. And we've done very well with that bet this year.
Before even going on site to a company, are there some red flags that people should look for?
Absolutely. We have our famous 8 Ps of resource stock evaluation, and the first of those is people. So when somebody tells me about a company, and I'll look at almost anything, and I try to triage them very quickly. The very first thing I do is look at the management page. I don't even look at the project. I don't even want to know. The first thing I do is look at the people. And if there are people on management or board of directors that have lied to me, and there are people who have, sorry to say, or have actively misdirected me, or that I just don't trust for whatever reason, as Rick likes to say, a track record unblemished by success, then I just stop. Because even if the rocks are really great, the wrong people can screw them up. So huge source of red flags there. It makes it very easy. You can screen out 8 out of 10 potential candidates right there. And then I look at what commodities am I interested, does this have either the production profile or the grade to make it look high margin enough to be of interest. But yes, I won't go there unless I think the company really has a chance to be written up. Because it's a waste of my time, it's a waste of their shareholders' money to host a visitor who isn't going to write it up. And I have a family. I don't do this to get away. I want to get home as fast as I can, and I don't want to go unless there's something really worth seeing.
Absolutely. Now, you've said that the U.S. could go into a recession in the third quarter. What are your thoughts now?
Well, who knows is the correct and logical answer. Nobody really knows. Doug, my boss, he still thinks the wheels will come off the wagon before the end of the year. So that's the Casey consensus, if you will. That's the marching orders. Will it not? I don't really know. But, the month before the Iron Curtain came down, most of us thought we would never see the end of the Soviet Union. It's like the famous story of the old oak that's hollow inside and you don't realize it till the storm blows it over. It looks inconceivable that the mighty U.S. could actually stumble in such a big way until it does.
Right. Now, you've explained how people might be able to avoid income tax. I think you were just doing some filming down in Puerto Rico. Maybe you can tell our viewers a little bit about that.
But I have to specify here, we're not talking about a tax dodge. This is a fully legal way to change your tax relationship with the United States government if you're a U.S. citizen. And the key point is that the U.S. taxes its citizens anywhere they live in the world. There is a large exemption if you're overseas, but you're still taxed. You still have to fill out your 1040 and all that stuff. Most other countries don't do that. You don't live there, you don't consume the services, why should you pay the income tax? So it's of particular interest to Americans. And anywhere you go in the world, the IRS will want to tax you, except Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. There's a special tax, not treaty, but relationship that goes back over 100 years. And this never mattered before because Puerto Rico had tons of its own taxes. But now, sort of like the European pigs, they're in that situation where they're in trouble and they can't print their own money. So they have to do something. And their something is to try to incent high net worth individuals to come live there and spend money there. And so this is not a tax dodge. This is a fully legal move where it's the only one place in the world you can go right now where you will pay local taxes that are greatly reduced and not pay U.S. taxes on your Puerto Rican-based income. And there are complications, but basically people should come and see. There's a different website to go to, internationalman.com. There's a whole bunch of links for the Puerto Rico tax incentives there. It's not a simple thing, but it is real.
And you're going to be releasing maybe a video providing...
Yes, right. Stay tuned at internationalman.com. There will be a video with lots of information on this. There are other reports there already, though, now.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Lou. It was a pleasure having you here.
Thank you much.